The main auditorium at Galactic Military Academy buzzed with excited chatter as students filed in for the morning assembly. Kepler-7 station housed the most prestigious training facility in known space, where the best warriors from dozens of species learned to fight together. Young aliens from across the galaxy sat in groups organized by their home worlds. Talking and laughing as they waited for the announcement, Maya Frost stood at the side of the stage, her human frame small compared to most of the instructors around her. She taught tactical warfare and had been at the academy for 3 years. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her uniform was perfectly pressed. Despite her professional appearance, her hands trembled slightly as she held her data pad. Jake Morrison, the human liaison officer, stood beside her with his arms crossed. He was tall for a human with broad shoulders and a stern expression that rarely changed. "They're not going to take this well," he said quietly. "I know," Maya replied, her voice barely audible over the crowd noise. The commandant, a massive Xantid named Crossvar, stepped to the podium. His species stood over 8 feet tall, with thick gray skin and 4 powerful arms. When he raised one hand for silence, the room immediately quieted. "Students of Kepler-7, I have an important announcement regarding training protocols," he began, his voice deep and commanding. Vextol, a Vrixian student in the front row, leaned forward with interest. His species were known across the galaxy as fierce warriors with sharp claws and quick reflexes. He had come to the academy expecting to prove himself against the best fighters from other worlds. Effective immediately. "All mixed species combat training will operate under new restrictions," Crossvar continued. "The human delegation has requested a formal ban on unrestricted combat trials. All future training exercises must include strict oversight, mandatory medical teams on standby, and immediate extraction capabilities for any participant showing signs of distress." A confused murmur rippled through the audience. Lyra, a Kelleran student known for her strategic mind, frowned as she processed the information. Her species had large eyes that could see in multiple spectrums and delicate features that made her look fragile despite her sharp intelligence. Furthermore, the commandant added, any training scenario involving live weapons or full contact combat must have no less than 3 safety protocols in place at all times. Human representatives insist these measures are non-negotiable. Cross, a massive Xantid student who shared his species with the commandant, let out a loud laugh. "The humans need safety protocols?" He called out, "What's next?" "Padded floors and participation trophies." Several students joined in the laughter. Vextol stood up, his tail swishing behind him in agitation. "With respect, Commandant, this seems excessive. We are training to be warriors. How can we prepare for real combat if we're worried about hurting the humans' feelings?" More laughter erupted. Even some of the alien instructors smiled at the Commandant's jaw tightened, but she remained silent. Jake's hand moved to her shoulder in a gesture of support. "The decision has been made," Crossvar said firmly, though even he seemed to find the situation somewhat amusing. "Human safety protocols will be implemented across all training programs. This is not open for debate." As students filed out of the auditorium after the assembly, the complaints grew louder. Vextol gathered a group of students from various species in the common area. "This is ridiculous," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "Humans are already the weakest species here physically. Now they want us to slow down our training to accommodate them." "Maybe Earth is just a soft world," suggested a Vrixian female named Kara. "They probably never had to fight for survival like our ancestors did." Lyra listened to the complaints but said nothing. Something about Maya's expression during the announcement troubled her. The human instructor had looked tense, almost frightened. That didn't match the image of weak, overprotective humans her classmates were painting. "I'm starting a petition," Vextol announced. If enough of us sign it, the Galactic Council representative will have to review this ban. It's discriminatory against non-human species. We have a right to proper warrior training. Within hours, over 200 students had signed a petition. The mockery spread beyond Vextheel's class to other training groups. Human jokes became common in the hallways. Students mimed wrapping themselves in protective bubble wrap or pretended to faint at the sight of training weapons. Maya walked through the corridors, hearing the whispers and laughter. She kept her head high and her expression neutral, but those who knew her could see the tension in her shoulders. Jake found her in her office late that evening, staring at her computer screen. "They don't understand," she said without looking up. "They're young," Jake replied. "They think they know everything about warfare because they've read historical battles and completed simulations. Should we tell them?" Maya asked. Jake shook his head. "That's not our decision to make. Command will handle it if the petition goes forward." The petition did go forward. Vextheel presented it to the Academy's Galactic Council representative with signatures from students representing 15 different species. The representative, a diplomatic Kelleran named Ambassador Trull, reviewed the document with growing concern 3 days later. Commandant Crossvar called another mandatory assembly. This time, the atmosphere was different. The usual casual chatter was absent, replaced by curious whispers about the emergency meeting. Security personnel lined the walls in greater numbers than normal. Medical teams stood ready near the exits. Maya and Jake entered together, both looking pale. Other human staff members were notably absent from the auditorium. Dr. Salas, the Academy's chief psychologist, sat in the front row with her team of counselors. Crossvar stepped to the podium, his expression grave. "Students, you have demanded an explanation for the human safety protocols. The human delegation has agreed to provide one." He paused, his forearms crossing over his chest. "You will be shown classified military footage from the human-Keldan border war. This documentation is 40 years old and has never been released to the general public." Vextheel felt a flutter of excitement. Finally, they would see proof that the restrictions were unnecessary. "I must give you a warning," the commandant continued. "This footage contains graphic content from actual combat. It shows why humans implemented strict safety protocols across all their training programs. Any student who feels they cannot handle viewing historical war documentation should leave now. Medical and psychological support will be available throughout and after the presentation." Several students laughed at the suggestion they might need psychological support for watching old footage. Vextheel grinned at Cross. "This should be entertaining," he whispered. Lyra noticed that Maya had taken a seat at the edge of the auditorium. The human instructor's hands gripped the armrests of her chair so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Jake had left the room entirely, his face drawn and pale. "Very well," Crossvar said, gesturing to the technician. "Begin the presentation." The lights dimmed and the massive screen at the front of the auditorium flickered to life. The first image showed a beautiful planet from orbit, green and blue with white clouds. Text appeared identifying it as New Dakota, a human agricultural colony. Peaceful farms stretched across rolling hills. Children played in yards while adults worked in fields. It looked like paradise, not a war zone. Vextheel frowned in confusion. Why were they showing a farming colony? Then the sky turned red without warning. Energy beams rained down from orbit. Buildings exploded in massive fireballs. The peaceful farms became infernos in seconds. The auditorium filled with the sounds of screaming from the footage. Children crying for their parents, adults shouting in panic. The Keldan warships appeared on screen. Dozens of them, their weapons fired continuously at civilian targets. Escape pods launched from the settlements, but Keldan fighters hunted them down, destroying them one by one. Students who had been laughing minutes before now sat in stunned silence. 3 human ships appeared on the edge of the system. Tiny compared to the Keldan fleet, a woman's face filled the screen. Her uniform identifying her as Captain Lisa Chun of the vessel Valiant Keldan Forces. This is Captain Chun of the Human Colonial Defense. Cease fire immediately and withdraw from New Dakota. This is your only warning. The Keldan commander's face appeared in response. A reptilian species with sharp teeth visible in his mocking smile. Weak humans, you are outnumbered 20-1. Flee while you can. Captain Chun's expression changed. The hope and diplomacy drained from her face, replaced by something cold and hard that made even Vex still shift uncomfortably in his seat. Very well, Chun said quietly. All ships, remove safety protocols. Authorization Chun Alpha 7. No restrictions. Her crew's faces showed fear at that command. But they obeyed. The 3 human ships changed formation, accelerating toward the Keldan fleet at speeds that made no tactical sense. They were heading straight into the enemy formation with no defensive maneuvers. They're going to die. Lyra whispered. The Keldan forces opened fire. Energy beams tearing into the lead human ship. Hull breaches appeared across its surface. Fires erupted from multiple decks. Any normal ship would have retreated. The human ship didn't slow down. It smashed directly into a Keldan carrier at full speed. The explosion consumed. The auditorium remained completely silent except for the sounds coming from the screen. 6 more human ships had arrived at New Dakota within the hour after the first 3 were destroyed. The students watched as these vessels moved into attack formation, knowing that their crews must have heard what happened to Captain Chun, and her people commander Ryan Blake's face appeared on screen. Younger than Chun but with the same hard expression, his ship, the Defiant, led the second wave of human forces. Unlike Chun, he didn't even attempt to contact the Keldan fleet with diplomatic messages. All ships, weapons free. Safety protocols already removed by order of Colonial Command. For New Dakota, Blake's voice was calm, almost casual, as if he was ordering lunch instead of certain death. No retreat. No surrender. His crew didn't hesitate or question the orders. They simply acknowledged and prepared for combat. The human ships engaged the remaining Keldan forces with tactics that made Lyra's analytical mind struggle to understand. They took attack vectors that exposed their weakest shields. They ignored damaged sections that any sane crew would repair immediately. They fought as if the ships themselves were expendable ammunition. One human vessel lost atmosphere on 3 decks but continued fighting. The camera caught footage of human crew members working to repair hull breaches while exposed to vacuum. They wore emergency suits, but those only provided minutes of protection. One engineer manually sealed a breach with a metal plate, welding it in place. Even as her suit's oxygen alarm blared, she finished the weld and collapsed. Her teammate dragged her to safety and immediately took her place, continuing the repairs without pause. The massive Xanthid student who had laughed at the ban gripped his seat with all 4 hands. His species prided themselves on physical toughness and pain tolerance, but he had never seen anything like this. These humans were working themselves to death. Another human ship lost its main engines, unable to maneuver properly. It should have withdrawn from combat. Instead, the captain used the ship's remaining thrusters to spin it in place, turning it into a rotating weapons platform. The ship fired continuously, even as enemy weapons tore it apart piece by piece. Why don't they retreat? Kara whispered, her earlier mockery completely gone. They could save themselves. No one answered because no one knew. The battle footage showed human ships fighting until they literally fell apart. One vessel's reactor went critical, and the captain had just enough time to aim his dying ship at a cluster of Keldan fighters before it exploded. The explosion consumed the ship, and 17 enemy craft. Keldan forces began to retreat. Their commanders had never faced an enemy that wouldn't stop, wouldn't surrender, wouldn't value their own survival. The humans have been outnumbered 5-1 at the start of this second engagement. Now the numbers were nearly even, because every human ship took multiple Keldon vessels with it when it died. But the humans didn't accept the Keldon retreat. They pursued the fleeing ships, hunting them down systematically. One Keldon captain broadcast a surrender signal, showing the white flag symbol recognized across the galaxy. The human response came from Commander Blake himself. "You showed our children no mercy." His voice was cold. "You destroyed our homes. You murdered our families. Surrender is not available." The pursuing human ships destroyed the surrendering vessel and continued hunting the others. Vextho felt sick. His warrior culture valued honor in combat, accepting surrender when enemy yielded. But these humans, they fought with a fury that transcended traditional warfare. The footage shifted to ground combat on New Dakota's surface. Human Marines landed in the ruins of settlements where Keldon ground forces had established positions. What followed was close-quarters fighting that made the space battle look restrained by comparison. Human soldiers advanced through enemy fire without proper cover. They fought through injuries that should have incapacitated them completely. One Marine took 3 hits to her armor but kept moving forward, dragging a wounded teammate to safety with one arm while firing her weapon with the other. The camera focused on a human sergeant named Brandon Wells, leading a squad through the rubble of what had been a school. Keldon soldiers had fortified the building, using it as a firing position. Wells took a hit to his shoulder that penetrated his armor. Blood sprayed from the wound. He barely slowed down. Wells threw a grenade through a window and charged into the building behind the explosion. His squad followed. The fighting inside was brutal and desperate. Hand to hand, humans against Keldons in narrow hallways. The humans were smaller and physically weaker, but they fought with absolute disregard for their own safety. Wells lost his rifle when a Keldon soldier knocked it from his hands. He drew a combat knife and closed the distance, taking 2 more hits in the process. The Keldon was larger and stronger, but Wells kept fighting. His knife found gaps in the enemy's armor again and again when the building was secure. Wells collapsed. Medical footage showed the extent of his injuries. 4 separate wounds, massive blood loss, broken ribs. His squad's medic worked frantically to stabilize him. "Evac is coming, sir." "Hang on," the medic said. Wells grabbed the medic's arm with surprising strength. "How many civilians did we save?" 17 found alive in the basement, sir." "You got them out?" Wells nodded and tried to sit up. "Good. Help me stand." "I can still fight." The medic had to physically restrain him. "Sir, you can't even walk." "Then give me a rifle and point me toward the enemy," Wells insisted. "I can still shoot," Dr. Solis, watching the students from her position in the front row, made notes on her datapad. Several students had already left the auditorium. Unable to continue watching, others sat pale and shaken. Some were crying. The footage moved to a human field hospital set up in the remains of a colonial administration building. Wounded soldiers filled every available space. Medical personnel moved between them, trying to treat injuries that would have killed most species. A doctor, Captain Sarah Mitchell, argued with a soldier who had lost his left arm below the elbow. The soldier was demanding to return to combat. "Private, you have one arm," Mitchell said firmly. "You're done fighting." "I can still operate a weapon one-handed, ma'am," the private insisted. "My squad needs me." "Your squad needs you alive," Mitchell countered. "Stand down." "That's an order." The private reluctantly obeyed, but his expression showed he would have returned to combat immediately if allowed. Around him, other wounded soldiers made similar demands, refusing evacuation, insisting they could still fight. The camera panned across the hospital, showing the true cost of the battle. Humans with terrible injuries being treated with limited supplies. The medical staff looked exhausted, many of them wounded themselves, but still working. Maya spoke again from her seat at the edge of the auditorium. Her voice was quiet, but it carried in the absolute silence. This is unrestricted combat. This is what humans become when we remove the psychological limiters we place on ourselves. The screen shifted to display final statistics from the FI's Battle of New Dakota. Human casualties were listed at 89%. Of the 237 human personnel involved in the defense, only 26 survived without major injuries. 43 survived with severe injuries, requiring years of recovery. The rest died in Keldon casualties, showed total fleet destruction. Every Keldon ship at New Dakota was destroyed. Every Keldon soldier on the ground was killed or captured. Human colony survivors numbered less than 3,000 from an original population of 50,000. Victory through complete sacrifice, but the statistics included one more crucial piece of information. After the Battle of New Dakota, Keldon forces never attacked another human world. The war ended within 6 months with a Keldon surrender. They had won battles against humans, but the cost of each victory was so devastating that their military command refused to continue. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. Maya continued, standing now and moving toward the front of the auditorium. Our ancestors on Earth chased prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. We are biologically capable of pushing past pain, past fatigue, past the point where our body should shut down. When we remove the psychological limiters that tell us to stop, we become extremely dangerous. She paused, looking at the students. Dangerous to our enemies, yes, but also dangerous to ourselves. The screen changed again, showing footage from the aftermath. Human soldiers receiving psychological treatment. Many sat in counseling sessions, barely speaking. Others showed signs of severe trauma, staring at nothing, unable to process what they had done. 70% of survivors required extensive psychological treatment, Maya said. 32 soldiers took their own lives in the year following the battle. They couldn't live with what they had become, couldn't reconcile the person they were before with the person who fought without limits. More statistics appeared. Human military command analyzed the victory and realized they had created a doctrine that was destroying their own people. Soldiers trained to fight without restrictions became unable to function in peacetime. The psychological cost of unrestricted combat exceeded even the physical casualties. The safety protocols were implemented not because we're weak, Maya said, her voice stronger now. They were implemented because we won't stop fighting until we're dead. The screen showed Training Station Crucible Mine, a human military facility dedicated to advanced combat training. The date stamp indicated this footage was 15 years old. Maya Frost appeared on screen, younger and without the scars she now carried. She wore the uniform of a lieutenant and carried herself with confidence. Pride 20 human cadets assembled in the training bay, all young and eager, like the alien students watching them now. They joked with each other, showed nervous excitement, displayed the universal behavior of military students about to prove themselves. Lyra noticed immediately that they looked exactly like her classmates. Full of confidence, they hadn't yet earned Lieutenant Maya Frost. The younger version on screen addressed the cadets with a senior instructor beside her. Today's exercise is a simulated shipboarding action. Team Alpha will defend the command deck. Team Beta will attempt to capture it. You'll use training weapons set to non-lethal mode, but treat this as real combat. Show us what you've learned. The cadets split into 2 teams of 10 each, checking their training gear and weapons. One cadet, a young man with dark hair, smiled at the camera. His name tag identified him as Cadet Brandon Cooper. He looked barely 20 years old, full of life and enthusiasm. Ready to show them what we can do? Brandon asked his teammate. Always ready, the teammate replied. FIS to bumping Brandon. The exercise began normally. Team Beta advanced through the training station's corridors while Team Alpha set up defensive positions. The cadets moved professionally, using proper tactics and communication. For the first few minutes, it looked like any standard military training exercise. Then the intensity increased. First contact between teams erupted in a flurry of training weapons fire. The weapons were designed to deliver painful but non-lethal hits, simulating real combat without causing serious injury. But the cadets didn't treat them as training tools. They fought as if the weapons were real. A cadet took a hit to the leg and went down. The training weapon's impact should have made her withdraw from the exercise. Instead, she crawled to cover and kept firing. Her face showed genuine pain, but also determination that seemed excessive for a simulation. "Cadet Morris, you're hit," one of the instructors called over the comm system. "Withdraw to medical checkpoint." Morris ignored the command, continuing to fire at the opposing team. Lieutenant Frost on screen frowned, watching the monitors. "Morris, acknowledge." "That's an order." "Just one more minute, ma'am," Morris responded between shots. "I can still contribute." More cadets engaged in close combat. The fighting grew more intense than any training scenario should become. Several cadets sustained injuries beyond what the non-lethal weapons should have caused. They were using the training equipment in ways it wasn't designed for, maximizing damage within the non-lethal parameters. Brandon Cooper's team pushed forward aggressively, taking hits but not slowing down. He led 3 teammates in a flanking maneuver that showed tactical skill, but also reckless disregard for the simulation's safety rules. They moved through areas marked as hazardous, ignoring warnings about environmental dangers. The instructors tried to maintain control, calling out cadets who should have withdrawn, ordering teams to slow down, reduce intensity. Nothing worked. The cadets acknowledged the orders and then immediately disregarded them, caught up in the heat of simulated combat. Then the accident happened. Brandon found himself cornered by 3 opposing team members in a narrow corridor. He was already injured, blood visible from a cut on his forehead where a training weapon had hit harder than intended. Any reasonable person would have surrendered at that point. Brandon didn't surrender. He used his training weapon in a way it absolutely wasn't designed for, attempting to create a distraction by overloading its power cell. The weapon was built with safety features to prevent exactly this kind of misuse. But Brandon had learned enough about the technology to bypass them. The weapon discharged with far more power than intended. The electrical surge spread through the corridor's conductive surfaces. 3 cadets went down from the shock, Brandon included. Alarms began blaring throughout the training station. Emergency shutdown. The senior instructor shouted, "All cadets evacuate to safe zones immediately." The electrical discharge had triggered a cascade failure in the training station systems. Emergency bulkheads tried to deploy, but several malfunctioned. A section of the station lost power, including life support systems. 4 cadets were trapped in the depressurizing sections. Standard emergency protocol was clear. Evacuate all personnel immediately and wait for rescue teams with proper equipment. The trapped cadets had emergency oxygen supplies that would last 30 minutes. Lieutenant Maya Frost gave the evacuation order. "All cadets, emergency extraction. Move to designated safe zones now. Do not attempt rescue operations." "That's a direct order." The cadets nearest to the damaged section ignored her. Brandon, despite his injuries from the electrical shock, was first to move. He and 2 other cadets forced open a damaged bulkhead manually. The compartment beyond was rapidly losing atmosphere. The 4 trapped cadets were visible, struggling with their emergency oxygen masks. "Cooper, stand down," Maya shouted, running toward the damaged section. "Rescue teams are 60 seconds out. Let them handle it." Brandon looked at her, his face showing the same expression Captain Chen had worn before ramming her ship into the enemy. Total determination without any consideration for personal safety. "60 seconds is too long, ma'am," he said. and stepped through the bulkhead into the depressurizing compartment. 2 other cadets followed him immediately. Maya cursed and grabbed an emergency oxygen mask. She couldn't let them go in alone. It violated every protocol, ended her career if she survived. But the decision took her less than a second. She went in after them. The students watching in the Academy auditorium saw Lieutenant Frost disappear into the damaged section. The camera switched to internal footage showing the rescue attempt. 5 humans working in near-vacuum conditions to save 4 trapped cadets. They had maybe 2 minutes of consciousness without proper suits. The footage showed them passing their own emergency oxygen to the trapped cadets, choosing to risk hypoxia themselves rather than let their teammates struggle. Brandon manually held open a bulkhead that kept trying to close. His hands were exposed to the freezing metal, ice forming on his skin. But he didn't let go of the trapped cadets. A young woman was unconscious. Brandon's teammate carried her toward the exit, while another cadet guided 2 more to safety. The 4th trapped cadet helped support the unconscious woman, despite his own oxygen deprivation. Brandon held the bulkhead. His hands were freezing to the metal, but releasing it meant the exit would seal, trapping everyone inside. His face showed pain, but no hesitation. Maya reached him last. "Let go. I've got it." She tried to take over holding the bulkhead. "You get him out." "Ma'am," Brandon said, his voice strained. "I can hold it." "That's an order, Cooper." "Court-martial me later." "Ma'am. Just get them out." Maya grabbed 2 cadets and pulled them toward the exit. The last trapped cadet was through. Brandon was all that remained. He released the bulkhead, and it slammed shut on his left hand. The impact was brutal. Crushing 3 fingers, Brandon screamed but pulled his hand free. Maya dragged him through the exit just as the rescue teams arrived. The damaged section sealed completely behind them. All 9 cadets survived. The medical footage that followed was difficult to watch. Brandon suffered severe injuries from vacuum exposure. Frostbite destroyed 3 fingers on his left hand, requiring amputation. His lungs were damaged from the brief vacuum exposure. The doctor said he would never serve in combat roles. The other cadets who went in for the rescue, including Maya, spent months in recovery. Maya's arms showed the burn damage that would become her permanent scars. Tissue damage from handling freezing metal in near-vacuum conditions. But the worst part came next. Footage showed the military investigation. Human Command reviewed every second of what happened at Crucible 9. The initial report recommended medals for the cadets who performed the rescue. Their actions had saved 4 lives despite violating direct orders. Then, someone looked deeper. The investigation expanded to other training stations, other exercises, other academies. The pattern became clear immediately. Human cadets consistently pushed beyond safety limits. Training injuries were severe and frequent across all facilities. Several cadets had died in what should have been controlled exercises. The problem wasn't individual students or specific instructors. It was human nature itself. One investigator's report appeared on screen, portions highlighted in red. Human trainees demonstrate consistent inability to recognize appropriate limits during training scenarios. Competitive instincts and biological persistence traits override rational decision-making. Cadets treat simulations as life-or-death situations despite clear evidence they are not. Current training doctrine is producing psychological and physical casualties at unsustainable rates. More statistics filled the screen. Over a 5-year period, human military academies had injury rates 300% higher than any other species training programs. 12 cadets had died in training exercises. Hundreds more sustained permanent injuries. Psychological casualties from training trauma exceeded combat trauma rates. Maya's testimony before the review board played next. The screen displayed a new date, 20 years after the Battle of New Dakota. The Kelvin species had spent 2 decades rebuilding their military, studying human tactics, preparing for revenge. Intelligence reports suggested they believed they finally understood how humans fought. The Keldons thought they could counter the suicidal aggression they had faced before a human mining colony appeared on screen. Located on the border between human and Keldon space, the colony housed 15,000 civilians and had minimal military presence. It looked vulnerable. Exactly the kind of target the Keldons had chosen before a Keldon warships emerged from hyperspace. Twice as many as they had brought to New Dakota. Their commander broadcast a message demanding immediate surrender. Humans of Border Station Epsilon. You have 1 hour to evacuate, the Keldon commander announced. We will take this colony as payment for New Dakota. Resist and you will be destroyed. The human response came from the colony's administrator, a civilian named Peter Walsh. Keldon forces. We are transmitting evacuation requests to human colonial defense. Please hold position while we organize civilian departure. The Keldons agreed, confident in their overwhelming numbers. They expected either a desperate civilian evacuation or a repeat of the suicidal human tactics from 20 years ago. They were prepared for both scenarios. What arrived was neither. 6 human warships dropped out of hyperspace in a tight defensive formation. The lead vessel was the Resolution, commanded by Captain Sophie Martinez. She immediately opened a channel to both the Keldons and the civilian colony, Border Station Epsilon. Begin evacuation procedures. You have 3 hours, Martinez ordered calmly. Keldon forces. You will withdraw beyond the designated neutral zone immediately. The Keldon commander laughed. You are outnumbered 3-1, Captain. Your people fought bravely at New Dakota. But bravery won't save you today. We've studied your tactics. We're ready for your suicide runs. Martinez's expression remained neutral. Almost bored. This is your final warning. Withdraw now. Make us. The Keldon commander challenged Martinez, didn't respond with anger or threats. She simply gave orders to her fleet. All ships. Maintain defensive formation Delta 7. Protect the evacuation transports. Rules of engagement are green. Safety protocols remain in effect. All personnel are authorized to engage hostile forces. Vextel leaned forward in his seat. Watching closely, this didn't match the footage from New Dakota at all. Where was the rage? Where was the desperate aggression? The Keldon fleet moved to attack positions. Their commanders still expected humans to charge forward with reckless abandon. Instead, Martinez's ships held their defensive formation around the colony, establishing overlapping fields of fire that any military strategist would recognize as textbook defensive doctrine. They're not attacking? Cross whispered in confusion. Lero was already analyzing the formation. They're forcing the Keldons to come to them, making the enemy attack into a prepared defense. The Keldon forces open fire first, expecting the humans to break formation and charge. Martinez's ships absorbed the initial barrage. Shields flaring but holding, return fire was measured and precise, targeting Keldon weapon systems rather than going for kill shots. All ships maintain formation, Martinez ordered. Focus fire on designated targets. Beta Wing prepared to rotate defensive positions. Her crew followed the orders exactly. No one deviated from the plan. No one took unnecessary risks. When one human ship's shields weakened, it rotated back in the formation while another moved forward to take its place. The maneuver was smooth and professional. The Keldon commander grew frustrated. They're not taking the bait. All ships, press the attack. Break their formation. Keldon vessels surged forward aggressively, abandoning their own defensive positions to hammer at the human line. This was exactly what Martinez wanted. Steady, she said calmly, watching the tactical display. Let them commit. The Keldons focused their fire on the human ships protecting the evacuation transports. They were determined to break through and prevent the civilian escape. Their ships pushed closer, concentrating their formation to maximize firepower. Now, Martinez said quietly. Execute flanking maneuver Alpha. Two human ships that had been holding back positions suddenly accelerated. Moving around the Kelvin formation at high speed, they attacked from the sides. The Kelvins had concentrated their forces so heavily that their flanks were exposed. The Kelvin commander realized the trap too late. All ships, defensive positions. But his forces were already committed, overextended. Martinez's ships in the center held firm while the flanking vessels tore into the Kelvin formation from the sides. The human tactics were precise, professional. Nothing like the desperate fury of New Dakotan. One human ship took heavy damage. Its captain immediately ordered evacuation of the affected sections. Medical teams to Deck 7, damage control. Seal compartments 12 through 15. Rotate us back in formation. The damaged ship withdrew in good order while another took its place. The crew that evacuated the damaged sections regrouped at safe stations rather than trying to fight through the injuries. Safety protocols were being followed exactly as designed. Lyra watched with growing appreciation. They're treating this like a military operation, not a blood feud. The Kelvin formation began to break apart under the organized human assault. Martinez gave no ground, but also took no unnecessary risks. Every move was calculated. Every order was measured. This wasn't rage. It was professional warfare. Kelvin flagship. You are surrounded, Martinez announced. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to galactic conventions. Continue fighting, and we will destroy you. You have 60 seconds to decide. The Kelvin commander, surrounded and outmaneuvered, made his choice. We surrender. Martinez didn't hesitate. Accepted. All ships, cease fire. Kelvin vessels will power down weapons and prepare to be boarded by security teams. The battle was over. Human casualties numbered at 4%, mostly minor injuries. One ship was heavily damaged, but no vessels were lost. The human fleet captured the entire Kelvin force. Nearly intact students in the auditorium stared at the screen in amazement. This was the same species that had fought with suicidal fury at New Dakota? The same humans who pushed themselves to death in training exercises. How? Cross asked, speaking the question everyone was thinking. Commandant Crossfar paused the footage. This is the power of controlled human warfare. The safety protocols didn't make humans weaker. They made humans sustainable. Maya stood again, moving to stand beside the screen. At New Dakota, we won the battle but destroyed ourselves in the process. 89% casualties. Only our willingness to die faster than the enemy could kill us brought victory. That doctrine works once, maybe twice. Then you have no soldiers left. She gestured at the paused image of Captain Martinez. This is what humans can do when we fight with discipline. We still have the same biological advantages, the same persistence, the same ability to push through pain and exhaustion. But now we control it instead of letting it control us. The footage resumed, showing the aftermath of the battle. Human medical teams treated both their own wounded and the injured Kelvin prisoners. Security forces processed the captured ships professionally. Everything was organized, efficient. Controlled Captain Martinez filed her after-action report while her crew conducted repairs. Total engagement time: 47 minutes. Casualties minimal. All wounded receiving treatment. Mission objective achieved. Civilian evacuation completed successfully. Kelvin fleet captured intact. The contrast with New Dakota couldn't be more stark there. The battle lasted hours and ended with mutual destruction. Here, humans achieved victory in less than an hour with minimal losses and captured valuable intelligence from the Kelvin ships. The safety protocols teach us to fight smart instead of just fighting hard, Maya explained. We learn to use tactics and strategy instead of relying on our ability to absorb punishment. We become soldiers instead of weapons that destroy themselves. Another scene played, showing Captain Martinez addressing her crew after the battle. Excellent work, everyone. We protected the colony, achieved our mission objectives, and brought everyone home. That's what professional military service looks like. Her crew looked tired but satisfied. No one was traumatized. No one required psychological intervention. They had fought well and survived, celebrating their victory without the haunted expression seen on New Dakota survivors. Statistics appeared on screen, comparing the two Keldan wars. The first war ended with a Keldan surrender after they lost multiple fleets to human forces. Human casualties exceeded 70% across all engagements. Psychological trauma affected nearly all survivors. The second war ended after this single engagement. The Keldans requested immediate peace negotiations after seeing humans could fight with discipline and precision. Human casualties across the entire war were less than 8%. No widespread psychological trauma reported. One battle, Lyra said softly. They ended the war with one battle. Because the Keldans learned what we're teaching you now, Maya replied. Unrestricted humans are terrifying but unsustainable. Controlled humans are still dangerous, but they're professional soldiers who can fight indefinitely. Which would you rather face? An enemy who will definitely try to kill you, but might destroy themselves doing it. Training resumed at the Galactic Military Academy 3 days after the footage presentation. The atmosphere had changed completely from the confident mockery that preceded it. Students moved through the corridors with a new awareness, particularly when passing human instructors and staff. Maya Frost arrived at her classroom to find every student already seated and waiting. Normally she had to chase down stragglers, but today everyone was early. Vextheel stood as she entered, followed immediately by the rest of the class. Instructor Frost, he said formally. Before we begin today's lesson, the class would like to make a formal statement. Maya set down her materials. Go ahead. We were wrong, Vextheel continued. We mocked something we didn't understand. We questioned rules that exist for good reason. We apologize to you and to all human personnel for our disrespect and ignorance. The entire class spoke in unison. We apologize. Maya felt unexpected emotion rising but pushed it down, maintaining her professional composure. Apology accepted. Now sit down and let's get to work. We have a lot of tactical theory to cover today. The lesson proceeded smoothly, but Maya noticed the students paying closer attention than usual. When she explained defensive formations, they asked thoughtful questions about sustainability and casualty management. When she discussed attack strategies, they wanted to know about safety protocols and extraction procedures. Lyra raised her hand during a discussion of prolonged engagements. Instructor, you mentioned persistence as a human advantage. How do modern human forces utilize that trait while maintaining the safety protocols? Good question, Maya replied. The key is channeling persistence into professional discipline rather than desperate aggression. Human forces can maintain combat operations longer than most species because we're biologically adapted for endurance. But now we pace ourselves. We rotate personnel. We enforce rest periods and medical checkups. We use our natural advantages without destroying ourselves exploiting them. She pulled up a tactical display showing a recent peacekeeping operation. This mission lasted 6 months. Human forces maintained continuous presence without significant casualties. Before the protocols, we would have pushed ourselves to exhaustion in the first month. Now we fight smart and sustainable. Cross asked about the psychological aspects. How do human soldiers resist the urge to push beyond safe limits? Your biology drives you toward persistence. How do you control it? Maya smiled slightly. Training, lots of training. Human military academies spend as much time teaching restraint as they do teaching combat skills. We learn to recognize our own biological drives and manage them. It's like, imagine if your species had natural aggression that made you stronger, but also clouded judgment. You'd want training to control when and how that aggression activated, right? Cross nodded in understanding. That makes sense. Use the advantage deliberately instead of letting it use you. Exactly, Maya confirmed after class. Several students approached her desk. Vex, though, led the group. Instructor, I told you my grandfather fought humans. I'd like permission to share his story with you. If you're willing to hear it. Maya gestured for him to continue. He commanded a Vrixian destroyer during the border conflict. Vex, though, began. His ship encountered a human frigate that was damaged. Outnumbered, no chance of victory. My grandfather's forces had clear superiority. The battle should have lasted minutes. He paused. Gathering his thoughts, it lasted 4 hours. The human ship wouldn't surrender, wouldn't retreat, wouldn't stop fighting even when it was clearly destroyed. My grandfather's forces finally disabled the human vessel completely. When they boarded to take prisoners, they found the human crew still trying to fight. Some were unconscious from injuries. Others had died at their stations. The captain was dead, but still strapped into her command chair. Maya listened without interrupting. My grandfather captured the survivors. 17 humans from a crew of 43. Most were wounded. All refused medical treatment until they were forced to accept it. The human captain had left orders in her personal log. Instructions for her crew to fight until physically incapable of continuing. Never surrender, never stop. Just keep fighting until the ship or the enemy was destroyed. Vesta's voice shook slightly. My grandfather said that was the moment he realized the war was unwinnable. Not because Vrixian forces couldn't defeat humans, but because humans couldn't be defeated in any conventional sense. They would die before surrendering. Every battle was total. Every engagement was to the death. The psychological cost on Vrixian forces was devastating. The war ended 6 months later. Maya said quietly, "Yes," Vexthal confirmed. "We won by treaty, but we lost the will to continue fighting." How do you fight an enemy that has no concept of acceptable losses? My grandfather came home decorated for bravery, but he never recovered from what he witnessed. He died 5 years ago, still haunted by the humans who wouldn't stop fighting. Maya touched the scars on her arms. That was us before the protocols. We were weapons that destroyed ourselves and traumatized everyone who fought us. The band saved us as much as it saved our enemies. Over the following weeks, training exercises took on new meaning for all students. When safety protocols activated, no one complained. Alien students began actively helping enforce the rules, particularly with human cadets who showed signs of pushing too hard. One training scenario highlighted the change. A mixed species team conducted a simulated urban combat exercise. The team included 3 humans, 4 Vrixians, 2 Kellerans, and a Xanthid. The scenario involved rescuing hostages from a fortified position. The human team leader, Cadet Danny Foster, coordinated the assault with proper tactical planning. His team advanced carefully, using cover and supporting fire. When one of the Vrixian students took a simulated hit and went down, Danny ordered an immediate tactical withdrawal. "We need to push forward," the Vrixian protested. "I can still fight." "Negative," Danny replied firmly. "You're wounded. The safety protocols say you withdraw for medical evaluation." No arguments. The Vrixian student complied without further protest. Later, he thanked Danny for enforcing the rules. "I was about to ignore my injury and keep going." That's what got humans in trouble before, right? Pushing past reasonable limits? Danny nodded. Exactly. The protocols protect all of us, including you. Maya observed the exercise from the control room, watching the mixed species team work together with mutual respect for the safety systems. This was what the Academy aimed to create. Warriors who understood their own capabilities and limitations. Jake joined her in the control room. "They're learning." "Yes," Maya agreed. "Finally learning the right lessons." Dr. Salas, appeared with her evaluation reports. Psychological assessments show significant positive changes. Students who viewed the footage demonstrate better risk awareness and higher compliance with safety protocols. Several have requested additional counseling to process what they saw, which is a healthy response. Any students unable to continue training? Maya asked. 3 transfers to non-combat programs, Dr. Silas replied. They're pursuing diplomatic or technical tracks instead, not from fear, but from genuine understanding that combat roles don't suit their psychological profiles. That's actually a positive outcome. Better they realize it now than in actual combat. Maya reviewed the reports, noting the detailed psychological profiles. The students weren't traumatized by the footage. They were educated by it. They understood the stakes, the costs, the reasons behind the rules. A month after the presentation, Commandant Crossvar called a special assembly. This time, students gathered without apprehension. They trusted the leadership to provide necessary information. Students, the Commandant began. You have demonstrated exceptional growth and understanding since viewing the classified footage. Your compliance with safety protocols is now 100%. Your respect for the rules and for your fellow students has improved dramatically. He paused. Looking across the assembled faces, I want to explain why we initially refused to show you that footage. Why we let you complain and mock without explanation. The students listened carefully, because being told something and understanding something are different. Crossvar continued. We could have explained the human biology, the psychological factors, the historical context. You would have intellectually understood but not truly comprehended. Sometimes, people need to see the truth with their own eyes before they can accept it. Vexthal raised his hand. Commandant, if I may, I understand now why you delayed showing us. But I wish we had seen it sooner. We wasted time mocking rules that exist for critical reasons. Perhaps, the Commandant acknowledged. But would you have been ready to receive that information? Would you have watched the footage with open minds if we had shown it immediately? Or would you have dismissed it as propaganda or exaggeration? The students considered this. Several nodded in reluctant agreement. They had been so confident in their mockery that earlier presentation might not have changed their minds. You needed to commit to your position first, Crossvar explained, to publicly question the protocols, to organize petitions, to feel certain of your perspective. Only then could you truly appreciate being proven wrong. Only then would the lesson stick. Maya stood. The footage is difficult to watch. We don't enjoy showing it. Every human here has personal connections.